A major water main break, water use restrictions, a state of local emergency. We're describing Calgary over the past couple of weeks, but we could also be describing the city of Atlanta, Georgia. The same week that our water main burst, major pipes in Atlanta ruptured. For a look at how things played out there, we've reached Riley Bunch. She covers city issues for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution newspaper. Joins us now on the line. Good morning, Riley.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you doing this. Describe what happened with your city's breaks.
Yeah, absolutely. It was pretty incredible circumstances, as you guys understand up there. It was Friday, May 31st, when we had our first break in a older area of the city. And so around the afternoon, residents in the southern half of the city, so it impacted thousands and thousands of residents, started noticing that they didn't have water pressure or no water at all. And officials didn't raise the red flags at first because there are some 500 breaks every year in Atlanta. We have a very old infrastructure system. But then that's when the water started erupting right from the streets. We had another break in a different part of downtown, and they issued a state of emergency as well as a boil water advisory for thousands of residents, thousands of businesses. It was pretty incredible to watch because it took 6 days for them to get it under control and for the advisory to be lifted.
Wow. When you're talking to people, businesses, like how big of an issue did this eventually become for Atlanta and for people?
Absolutely. It was huge. And it was kind of reminiscent of COVID era times, right? We had people going to get water bottles from the store, and especially our businesses were heavily impacted. Atlanta is a huge tourist city, a huge convention city. We had 10,000 or so businesses impacted, lost money from anywhere from $8,000 to $200,000 is what we've heard. So it had huge impacts to residents. And then it's just hot here too. It's also extremely hot. We've had to open cooling centers recently. So that had a huge impact, as well as on our hospitals, had to cancel a lot of appointments, very crucial surgeries, and our massive aquarium had to shut down too.
Yeah, this is a time of year, it could be hot here, but it hasn't been. And we've actually had a fair bit of rain, which is also helpful for people that have had limited water use for outside stuff. Now, have you gotten to the bottom of what caused the pipes to burst in Atlanta?
Yeah, so Atlanta is kind of known for its extremely old water infrastructure system. It dates back to the 1860s. So we do have a lot of breaks. And as I said, that's why officials didn't really raise the red alarms at first. But it really is just outdated pipes. They posted a picture of the pipe that was pulled up from the ground on one of these breaks, and it really looked somewhat imploded in on itself. So our mayor called it really a wake-up call to address our infrastructure. And as we're seeing across the country as well, it's playing out in other cities too.
Yeah, so your water is now back up and running. What was the fix, or what did the repairs look like in Atlanta?
Yeah, so it was extremely difficult. Our system too is very small. Our pipes are somewhat smaller, and the pipes had to be depressurized, right? So turning off the water completely to spot the break and then patch it. But then you have to flow the water back up to see if the patch even holds. So there were a number of times that they repressurized the system and their fix didn't hold. We also had issues sourcing materials for these to stop these breaks. There was one particular break in a midtown neighborhood in downtown that needed a special valve pipe to close completely manually because the geyser of water was shooting directly over what they needed to fix. And we had to source that from out of state. So it also highlighted kind of the struggles of getting the materials to fix these infrastructure problems.
It's interesting. So much of this is familiar. I think there are, lengths of pipe and materials to fix our problem on their way up from San Diego right now on the back of a truck or trucks. So that sounds familiar. All these businesses, you said 10,000 businesses affected by the water outage and the issues. How are they being supported to get through that?
Yeah, that was one of the things that our government or our local officials really jumped on quickly. So I also cover the city council here, and within a few days, they had legislation that dedicated $7.5 million in relief fund to small businesses impacted by the water outages. And so just for kind of a breakdown. So 7,000 were impacted by the first break, and then some 3,000 were impacted by the second break. So this was ongoing for a lot of businesses too over the course of an entire week. So that this relief fund will go for losses that weren't covered by insurance as well as pay for employees. So our city is going really ramping up trying to get that money out, and businesses can start applying as early as next week.
Okay. How have the politics played out, like at city council and with residents and citizens and their feelings towards, your city government and that stuff?
Yeah, there was a lot of animosity at first. Our mayor was actually out of town hosting a fundraiser for his reelection bid. So he got a lot of backlash that he wasn't here in the city for the first day or so. His rebuttal to that is that they didn't think the break was so serious until going into Saturday. But that thousands of residents already were without water. So he got slammed pretty hard by residents and as well as even people on city council were really unhappy with how it played out. The communications were really bad. People didn't know, is my water okay to drink? Is my water not okay to drink? They definitely got it under control later in the week as this process moved on. But it was definitely a hit for our mayor for sure.
Yeah. So it's still early days in a way, but what lessons has Atlanta learned from this at this point?
Yeah, so our mayor said that it was, quote, a wake up call to address our infrastructure. And like I said, our infrastructure here is really, really outdated, and they have been slowly replacing pipes, but clearly not fast enough. So we have actually the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which is our federal agency, coming in to do a massive study of our water infrastructure, a $1 million study. But entire repairs of the entire system could take billions of dollars, right? So our mayor has said that he will be going to the federal government asking for more money for these fixes because clearly it can become a dire situation.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, it's good to speak with you about this, Riley. I can't tell you how much there are, there's of course differences, but there are just so many similarities when you describe the experience and the politics and the fallout. So I appreciate you taking the time this morning. Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
All right, that's Riley Bunch. She covers city issues for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution newspaper. Reached her this morning in Atlanta, Georgia.